Hello, this is Dale Matthews, and Mike Jones joins me where we're talking about world's best government efficiency. Mike?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I want one of those watches.
Yeah, we're keeping track of the amount of time that she spent 3 years to develop a stellar economic development plan. And it didn't quite work out very well. But 3 years is really nothing when you think about what the effect it would have on Josephine County economy and supplying money for the sheriff and everything else. Why, she's just barely just begun.
Yeah.
You've only just begun.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was hoping
Were
you weren't
you?
going to
I knew
sing it.
you were. Okay. So
Yes.
I kind of promised some people out in Sunny Valley that we would start with their story. The first question I have for Sunny Valley is what the heck is a radio park? They've got something out in Sunny Valley called the Radio Park. Now, I'm
Mm.
going to make a guess. When radio first started out, and maybe it has nothing to do with radio, when it first started out, I mean, there's even a wagon, a little red wagon called a radio flyer. Radio flyer? What the heck? And this was a radio park. Radio was a really big deal when they first started. In fact, they made a rule. There was a law at one point, just like texting is now, that if you were going to play the radio while you were in a car, you had to pull over to the side of the road to play your radio because it can be very distracting, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So maybe a
Yes.
radio park is where you park your car while you're listening to the radio? I don't know.
Yes, perhaps. Or maybe your radios were just really big and they needed one big outdoor location to host the thing at the time. You know, big, great big vacuum tubes.
No, then the city council of Grants Pass would get involved saying you cannot play your radio outdoors. You have to
Yes.
keep it indoors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of that, just before we go into the Sunny Valley Radio Park story, just before that, you guys hold on, hold on. First, Mike's going to tell you a little bit about breaking news. Have you been
Yeah,
breaking
it's
news again, Mike?
it's kind of breaking, yes, and breaking other things sometimes as well. But this is well, I would hope most people know this by now, but Grants Pass has officially banned outdoor marijuana grows. And this is a story, hat tip to KOBI Channel 5 for this. Grants Pass, Oregon. Growing marijuana outdoors will be banned in Grants Pass. The city council voted 6-0. Well, these are birds of a feather, aren't they? 6-0 Wednesday night to approve the ordinance. The ban on both medical marijuana and your regular recreational, I guess, outdoor grows takes effect on January 1st, 2016. So get out there and grow your marijuana today because you only got
Oh,
6 months.
brother. Okay. Even medical marijuana, it's okay to do it now with medical marijuana, and God provides the sunshine. You certainly cannot have a free source of power. You should go, everyone should go right on down to the mayor of Grants Pass, who makes part of his money from helping people set up systems to grow indoors. And he got a vote on this. Or could have,
Well,
or had an effect on, instead of recusing himself, saying, hey guys, listen to me. I will derive some benefit from this if we make everybody grow indoors. So I'm going to step aside. No, this isn't what he does.
one would hope that that is something that he would have done. Of course, he didn't. But
Well, now, no, to be clear, he didn't need to vote because it
right,
wasn't a tie.
yeah, it was 6-0. But however, um, I mean, if people think that this guy was conflicted and shouldn't have been involved in that and still injected himself into it, you can always, when you're going to set up your indoor grow, go through the phone book and find out which one of these is the mayor's operation, Darren Fowler, and don't partake of their services.
I don't think he's going to like that when you tell people that.
Oh well. No,
The other
no, I'm not telling people to do anything. I'm saying if you care about that, that's certainly one way that you could express yourself.
Now, this morning, Badcounty.com was once again a source of news for some people. I mentioned to Simon Hare the other big vote that happened last night, and he didn't know about this, so we gave him the information, and there you go. Good night, everybody. No, what I did was I said, do you know about the big contentious vote that they had last night with the Grants Pass City Council about Eco Northwest? This is the firm that Cheryl Walker has finally admitted she helped pick this firm. She was the only county commissioner that was involved with that group to pick who would get this. That what we did not know at the time, and Simon was pretty upset when he heard this, is that the big fight that they had within the city council was one of the city councilors brought up and he said, do you guys all realize that this Eco Northwest group, I mean, they are all called Eco Northwest, I guess, that they put out this real negative report about the timber industry? Really? And now they purport to help us figure out our economic future? Is that right? The vote came down to 3-3. They almost tossed it all out. They almost decided not to work with the firm that she picked. Okay, then the mayor stepped in and he made the deciding vote. This was so close that when Dan DeYoung walked into the room, he said that he wasn't going to do this, and he changed his mind during the discussion and said, well, I guess we could. And that's what made it 3-3. Otherwise, it would have been 4-2. And that's how the mayor got involved in making the decision. The county will then spend $37,500 to get somebody to do what she was not able to do in 3 years. You heard the last 2 days, she was upset, except that both she and Simon said, well, we weren't fighting. We posted 10 videos about this. You can look at them anytime you want to, and you tell me that they're not fighting.
How many of these scams are we going to go through before we just decide that this is a stupid idea?
Well, how many companies are involved in helping us figure out our financial future? I mean, just the biggest ones of all. What about SoReady, Southern Oregon Regional Economic Development, Inc.? Well, as Cheryl Walker says, they don't really have anything to do with economic development, but they make loans. Wait a minute, doesn't the IVCDO make loans? Aren't we giving them money to make loans? Oh, they're not loaning out money because they're not ready to loan out the money. But we've given them the money, but they're not ready to loan it out. What? What is all this? It's like the various groups that are getting the money to do fire, getting ready for fire, no, stopping fires from happening. You got everybody falling out of the word. Well, I'd like 100,000. Oh, I'd like it too. Oh, and then there was the firm that they did this little diorama of a neighborhood, you know, with pretend little weeds around it and trees and they spent a lot of money on making a little diorama with little houses and little trees and everything. We're spending money on this? Really? It's an industry just getting the money, just getting the grants.
I think I feel like some diarrhea is coming on here.
Oh, man. He looks like it all the time. Yeah, I have to kind of agree with you. It seems like a bit of a scam, but now we know we're in good hands because this firm, according to 3 out of 6 of the city councilors, kind of has a belligerent attitude about timber in general. Well, are they right? Are they wrong? It doesn't matter because there's not going to be any economic development plan.
Well, you know what's so funny is that Cheryl can all lecture us about how we don't know anything about economic development.
And she lectured me.
Goes from one of these organizations to the other, and we pay our scam money to them. And at the end of their run here, they will produce nothing, and they will have taken the money, and it is a huge frickin' scam. When are we going to knock it off? It's so dumb.
We're developing the economy for somebody. We're developing it for firms. Remember when Mark Van Holly came in and he was going to do all this they were all buying it. They were, oh, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. And the only thing that turned them around was a lot of people showing up at the weekly business session and saying this. And the other thing that turned it around is they accidentally, I think, made a deal with him. Well, once you get Jackson County, oh yeah, that's a done deal. They've already said, okay, once you got that, yeah, well, see, that's already done. Yeah. Once you got that, and he didn't have it, and he never did get it, and we didn't make the deal.
Well, you know what? Listen, Cheryl Walker's record of
Oh,
economic development decisions should preclude her from lecturing anybody about knowing anything about economic development. You know, I mean, if that's her, you know,
well,
I'm
I tell you,
sorry.
I'll make a
That's
deal with Cheryl. As she can lecture me about economic development, as soon as she can remember the name of the company that she founded and was running.
yes,
She couldn't
yes.
remember the name of her own company that she founded and was running. So when she can remember the name of her company, then she can set me down and give me a long lecture about how you don't know anything about economic development. You don't
Well, you know
recognize
what?
it when you see it.
My father taught me a long time ago. You don't go by what people say. You go by what people do. I rest my case. You know,
Okay.
she doesn't have a track record here. Well, actually, she doesn't have a positive track record. She's got a negative track record. You know, because plaques on rocks and wheelchair ramps that are going to create 95 jobs or whatever, that is complete. That's a shell game. That's a scam. And she doesn't see. They don't want to be criticized for scamming people anymore. They don't want people to look in depth into the projects that they're working on because they know that if they propose these things, that's what's going to happen to them. That's why they go with these little outside firms, and the outside firms come up with their little things, and no one's going to scrutinize that nearly as heavily as they would if the commissioners were proposing it.
Okay, so
And
I'm sitting in
anyway.
today's meeting. Thursday is the big day. We've mentioned this to you in the past. It's the big day. Very first item. Wally Hicks, the county legal counsel, has been asked to prepare some kind of a report to the commissioners about what's going on out in Sunny Valley. I kind of admire these people. I don't know if they're always right, but they're always in there. They're trying to get their way. And Patricia Ness out there and some other people want to do something with a radio park. Okay, apparently there's a building out there that there's some people who've been working on this for a long time. According to what they said at today's meeting this morning, they've been working on this project for 20 years, not Pat Ness and the others, some other group. And they would like to continue working on it. And Pat Ness says, no, wait a minute. They're not doing anything with it. Why don't you let us see what we can possibly do with it? Because this is ridiculous. There's nothing going on here. We'd like to have a chance of doing something with this. And so the commissioners, well, they've been working on it a long time. Yeah. And they said 20 years. And, perhaps they just need some more time. And Pat Ness and the other, oh, what more time? This is impossible. They're not getting anything done. And well, they spent over $400,000 of your tax dollars, and there's nothing to show for it, according to both the commissioners and Pat Ness and those guys out in the Sunny Valley.
Well,
Well,
what exactly is this place?
well, apparently it's going to be some kind of museum extolling the virtues of Sunny Valley.
Oh.
Okay, well, whatever. Okay, but that's not exactly the point. Who's got the better idea for a museum, or who's got the better idea for the use of this building? Not really. The point is, apparently the first group hasn't done hardly anything. So the thing that they decided was, well, Wally, why don't you drop the contract? Well, we'll keep giving these guys a chance, and we'll just have to send a letter off to Pat Ness saying no, thank you. And how long do you guys think the contract should be? Well, I think probably 10 years would be a good idea. Oh yeah, a decade. Yeah, we'll give them another decade. They've already had a generation to do some 20 years to do something about this. We'll give them another 10 years. So I couldn't help myself. I left the camera running when the next person came up, and I went out to the hallway and said, Wally, please, on behalf of the people out in Sunny Valley, I don't know much about this, but wouldn't it make more sense to give the previous group, if you're going to give them one more chance, or like 21 more chance or whatever after 20 years, why don't you just make it 6 months, or at the outside, a year? And if they don't do anything in 6 months or a year, yank it from them and give somebody else a chance.
Yeah,
Don't
Boy,
sign a
I,
deal for 10 years.
I would love to know what the benefit to the community is, and what the cost is going to be for that, and
$400,000 so far. And what
for
is there? Do you know anything about the radio park?
I know nothing about it, but
Right.
$400,000. Have they done anything, or are they just consuming the money for their own purposes?
I
What
can
what's
only tell you what the commissioner said.
have they
Basically
built
nothing.
anything?
Basically nothing. They've done some renovation and they've done some painting and they've done some of this, but there's nothing to do. This is according to what they said. Okay.
Because you can do a lot for 400 grand, just so you know.
Well, oh no, you
Got a
can't.
little
Oh no, you
experience
can
in
spend
that.
$400,000 in 20 years and not really get hardly anything done. And then let's sign a contract for another decade based on this track record.
This matches, Cheryl Walker's economic development prowess here.
Yes. Now, there's a lot more to this story. Why, you don't understand, Mr. Matthews. Well, probably
Oh,
not. But I mean, at first glance, I would say give the dang guys 6 months. And if they don't produce something in 6 months, as the fellows did out at the Ivy Airport, look at what those guys did. If you don't produce something in 6 months, sit down with Pat Ness and say, okay, what's your plan? Seems fair to me, but I don't know anything about economic development. $400,000 in 20 years.
well, you don't
Zero.
have to be a rocket scientist.
Okay, well, that's a good thing because, Pluto has already been explored fully. Okay, so here's another thing about economic development. We've seen something like this before. So it turns out that once again, Copeland, for a project to do some surfacing for the Public Works, which is Simon Harris' liaison position is to Public Works and Rob Brandis. Copeland, once again, got outbid by Knife River. And as soon as he heard this, Simon Harris says, well, I wanted Copeland to get this contract. Knife River was the lowest bidder. I want the lowest bidder to get the contract, not Simon Harris' pals at Copeland. He says in an open public meeting, this is now the third time I've heard him say this. We've got two of them on tape, that he doesn't like the idea that Copeland didn't get the contract. Hello, I like the idea that the lowest bidder gets the contract. Taxpayers, Simon, like the idea that the lowest bidder gets the contract. It goes to the lowest bidder.
Right. Is there some sort of an issue with because Knife River, aren't they not a Josephine County based company?
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're winning the dang contracts. They are
Right.
of this area. Remember how we're all in one area together, why everything
Right.
here affects over there? Well,
And
it,
you would
it
think
affects our
that
bottom line.
you would think that Copeland could do it cheaper because they don't have to transport their stuff over from some other county.
And so this was part of their conversation. How is it that Knife River can do this? And there was speculation on the part of the commissioners that maybe Knife River was even taking a bit of a loss in order to continue getting contracts. I'll go for that kind of contract every day of the week, buddy.
Really? Come on.
Yeah, that's what they speculated.
That's stupid. No wonder why we can't get these people to accomplish any economic development. They don't understand how to add. This is an issue
They don't understand
here.
how to count the number of floors in a building either.
You cannot continually take contracts at a loss. And by the way, what would the purpose of that be? So you can continue getting them,
Yes.
and that your name is out there and everybody knows who you are while you go down the tubes.
Mike, don't you
That's just
understand?
stupid.
But Cheryl Walker said just yesterday, didn't you hear her? We're doing a stellar job in economic development. She's wearing her stellar dress here and asking Simon Hare to go ahead, try to connect the dots. Simon, he didn't want to do that. How can you possibly say, she's saying, and this is just for a joke, how can you possibly say that this is efficient government? Why, have I told you about the patriotism of my family? How can you possibly question that, Mr. Matthews? So, a little inside joke for those who have been paying attention. Okay, so those who are not, Cheryl Walker had one other thing to say about all this. She says, well, remember now, this is probably the most interesting news of the whole newscast this evening. So Cheryl Walker has been talking a lot about how economic development actually works in Josephine County. And don't forget that she used to be president of Rotary. So let me tell you how it works in Josephine County. She says, well, why don't we call Copeland and ask them, are you sure this is your lowest possible bid? Hint, hint. Even Simon, who wants Copeland to get the contract, will step forward and say, no, these are sealed bids. Oh, she looked kind of disappointed. You can't just call up your pals and say, is this your lowest bid? There wasn't much of a difference between the two bids, and we now know who won. But the bids are sealed. It's not okay, Cheryl Walker, who is the expert on economic development, to call your pals and suggest that they maybe do a lower bid. That's not okay. This is her economic. She does know, to be honest, she knows economic development in Josephine County. That's what you do, right? What does that tell you?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I
He's
go
the
along with
expert.
that.
He's the expert about Josephine County bidding processes.
Yeah.
You call your pals and suggest that they make a lower bid. Ta-da! Then Copeland gets the contract. That's what they said. Boy, we're going to put that tape up for you to see. Okay, so there's great news on the parking lot that Simon Harris created over at the Dimick Tower. Great news.
Mm-hmm.
The potential bidders on what to do next. And didn't that go down sometime in December or January? And it's now
Mm-hmm.
what? Let me look at my watch. Let me
Yeah,
look at
it's
this
we're
clock.
we're
It's
we're a
now
little over halfway.
July. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we're a little
Well,
halfway through the year. So
yeah. Well, sometime in September, the bidders are going to start coming up here to look at the parking lot and maybe come up with an idea. Have you
the
thought about paying?
bidders.
Yeah. Oh, the bidders on what to do next.
Well,
Because we're going to ask somebody to come up with an idea of what the heck to do with this parking lot. I suggest you
how
put
is
some.
that bidding though?
Well, they would come up and they have to look at the parking lot to
Uh-huh.
decide what can possibly
Oh,
be
and they
done.
have an idea, and for $1 million, I could do this with it. Is
Sure.
that what they
Well,
do?
they could put Rob Brandis and Public Works on an emergency striping deal because we got money to do emergency striping, and they could put striping on there so you could park your cars. That's a big start.
Sure. Yeah.
Since such an ideal location, as they pointed out several times, it's in an ideal location. It's
It's
way.
it's in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
This
yeah.
is, it's not an ideal commercial location
Oh,
unless
they
you're
keep
talking
saying this.
a site for a convalescent home or something like that.
Right.
I could see it working for that, but you're not going to be putting a store up out there or something because, first of all, you'd have to tell people how to find it. They wouldn't know. I mean, a lot of people don't know where this Dimick Tower campus was.
No.
They have no idea.
Well, we've got this brand new GPS system that we paid for. Maybe we can hand out free GPS locators to people so they can go find where to park their car, and then they
Wait a
can
minute.
walk into town.
Hang on a second. We paid for a GPS. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, boy! I tell you, the folks in the assessor's office, they needed this GPS system,
Mm.
and the folks in forestry, they had to have
Oh,
access to a
oh, oh.
GPS system. Yeah.
So that's not publicly accessible though. This is something.
No, no, are you kidding? No, just because we're paying for it doesn't mean we get access to it.
Right.
Right. Okay, so sometime in September, they're going to start thinking about what to do with the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that one would hope that you'd know about another liaison position for Simon Hare is he is liaison to parks. And you might be wondering, these are all at the Thursday meeting, today's Thursday meeting. You might be wondering, well, um, should we spend the next big bundle of money coming in from the state? Mike's contention is we shouldn't be doing this kind of thing at all. But if we're going to be spending money, should we spend it on Whitehorse Park, or should we spend it on some other park, or maybe another park? Where is the best place to put the money? Well, if you're going to spend money, maybe it is a good idea to know where would be the maximum bang for the buck. And as Simon pointed out today, he said, he had kind of looked into this. I'm musing at the moment. You remember I got in trouble with Keith Eck. Are you just
Yes.
musing? Well, if you're just musing, why don't you go sit down? And I said, I'm rubbing my chin in the same way you've been doing, the same all the time I've been talking. Yes, I'm musing and I'm speaking. It's okay. My mother told me it was okay. So you might want to know how much money White Horse Park brings in, and then you decide what's the best way to spend money. Should it be on Whitehorse because maybe they'll end up being twice as good and bring in twice as much money? But first you have to know how much money does Whitehorse Park make versus some other kind of parks. Did you know, fellow taxpayers, we have no idea how much each park brings in? We know how much all the parks bring in, but there's no way
Oh,
with
come
the
on.
fancy no, Mike, come and get with the program. There's no way with all this remember how we were going to spend $600,000 on
Hello,
software
spreadsheets.
no, there's no way to know. There's simply no way to know.
There's
We're
no
just in
way
the
to
dark.
know? No,
And
no. There is a
Simon,
way to know.
after 5 years in office, Simon and liaison to parks just today announced at this meeting that I was at, maybe he's full of beans, okay, maybe I am, certainly not Mike, but Simon here announced that there's no way to know. There's simply no way to know, everybody. We
Oh,
just
my
don't
God.
know.
Well, why don't you just call the people at the park, and tell them, by the way, you can start stealing from us in any quantity you care to, because we have no way of finding out how much money you're bringing in. So there you go.
Well, okay, so one of the problems has been apparently that when people walk into various activities that are happening and it could be the fair, because we've heard this about the fair, it could be the parks, that some people have little certificates that say, let me in for free, and others pay. And Scott Chansey brought this up with the buses today. Okay, that when people get on the buses, it's a ding for Scott Chansey. I like him, but when they get on the buses, apparently the bus drivers and the people at the fairgrounds are not really keeping track of how many. They're not keeping track of how many people are coming in the door, so we don't really know who's getting in for free, who's getting in for a discount, who has a bus pass, who doesn't have a bus pass.
Yeah,
we
but
don't really know the numbers.
But hang on. If somebody has a bus pass, we can pretty well assume that they paid for a bus pass that's good from this point to that point. So
But
we know
nobody's
we've
counting.
got our money.
Nobody's counting how many people are getting on, or not counting them efficiently, how they're getting on. So you don't really know if there were 40 passengers on that bus trip or 65 passengers, because sometimes the bus drivers count them accurately and sometimes they don't.
You know what? I've actually seen this done before when they're, when people are coming up in the door, they have one of those little counters and they just go chick, 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 chick.
They have those same counters at the fairgrounds. And guess what happens? They can't operate them correctly, because going like this is hard.
Listen, you know what? You could have a smartphone app that would keep track of this, and all they would have to do is when somebody comes in, you go, okay, one person came in or two people came in, and it would automatically file it away in a database there.
No,
it would all be electronically accessible instantaneously.
No, because it doesn't matter whether you're pressing on a cell phone or you're pressing a little gadget that's less high tech. They can't do this. They can't do it.
Yes,
it's not happening.
Well, this comes down to the HR department. I'm sorry, but you can't hire people that cannot fulfill the requirements of the job. And we may be getting a little far afield here because, I don't know what took place in this conversation or whatever, but I'm assuming that you can get people who can count. And I'm also assuming that there could be somebody involved in each one of those places who understands how to input numbers into a spreadsheet. This is not rocket science. It's pretty simple, really. I mean, that the whole reason for spreadsheets is to make accounting easy.
If you've got a problem at the top with people who can't count or don't know a good deal from a bad deal or don't know about a plaque on a rock, it's not going to create 90 jobs.
Well, you know what, and here this is where I kind of become deflated a little bit because
you and me both.
It's one of these things you think, well, all we really need to do is get some good people in there. No, not really, because you have other problems. You have earmarked funds that cannot be spent for any other purpose. So you're hogtied there. You can't do anything. Then you have union contracts. That means you can't fire people if you want to. If Joe is a loser, you can't get rid of him.
You mean if Joe can't do this? And
at
the fairgrounds. At the fairgrounds, a lot of this is done by volunteers. They just can't, when their thumbs get tired, Mike, they just can't keep up with the volume.
This can be done if you want to get it. If there's an actual will to make this stuff happen, you can do. We've been to the moon. I mean, we can do this.
We've been to Pluto.
This is not hard. This is pretty simple here. But this is why I said I'm a little deflated, because there are so many things constricting us that we can't really do what we'd like to do, even though we have this nice home rule charter, which really doesn't mean anything, sadly.
Oh, now wait a minute. Now, if you hold that home rule charter over your head, it's going to protect you on a rainy day.
Perhaps.
No, let's not be all negative. Let's not be all negative. Let's be positive. I have a positive.
But you can get some of this stuff done, but you're going to have to fight like hell for it. And
yes, sir.
None of these people has the gumption to do any of that. And I don't really see anybody on the horizon who recognizes that these are the problems. You can go in there and make decent decisions. And actually get stuff done around here. It wouldn't be that hard to do, but you're going to have all these fights first. And it's set up that way for a reason, so that you can never peel these layers of the onion and get to the core of the thing and actually accomplish something.
That's what we're doing. You're not going to see it in the Courier. But that's what we do. That's why we tell you these stories. We tell you this. It might be all negative news. It might be all, oh my gosh, they don't even know what they're making from a park. We're telling you because you don't have time to go to the meeting. I go to the meeting, not you, Mike, but I mean everybody out there. We're telling you, and I'm sorry that it's a bit depressing for Mike and for the rest of you, but at least now you know who's been running the show here. As Simon actually said at one of the meetings, I got clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right, and here I am stuck in the middle with you.
Yes. Did he pay the royalty after he did that?
He really did say this. And you remember at another time where he said what Cheryl and Keith were doing was a kangaroo court? Every once in a while, this stuff comes out. He just can't help it. A kangaroo court. They didn't like that. Okay, but I got really good news. At yesterday's weekly business session, Sandy Casanelli came forward. That's good news in itself. When was the last time you saw somebody that left county service as a commissioner for any reason, and then you see them at a future meeting? They're just not there. But she comes in. It doesn't happen. And then she says, it would really be nice if you just tell us what the heck is going on with some of these plans that you have. I mean, of course, they'd like to see a red line version, the version where it crosses out the part that's been changed. Even Simon is asking for this. 150 pages, you don't know. Even Simon says, but I can't tell what was the old one and the new one. Thanks, Simon. We can't either, okay? Could you please put that out there? So the HR director says, well, we could put that online. We could do it even today. Well, it's not there, and is it ever going to be there? My guess is no. But yes, we could. Yeah, we'll put that up. Yeah, Sandy's going to watch, and she'll tell us, the progress of that. Boy, time will be just any day now, brother. You're going to see this stuff out there, so we can have an idea of what's going on, and maybe we won't have to pay for it. As Simon Harris said to me one time, Mr. Matthews, you're going to have to spend a lot of money to keep track of what we're doing. That's nice. Okay, so the good news is that they say faithlessly that they can put that up and will put that up on the website. Kind of the bad news is, though, even Simon Harris said, well, if you put that up there without an official government explanation, I'm paraphrasing now, without an explanation of what it really means. I mean, the words are there, but since most people don't really understand a lot of that, and there's nobody there kind of like online or as a little video pop-up to explain, well, it says this, but really means that, okay? Since that's not there, a little information in the hands of the public can be a dangerous thing.
Oh, really?
Yep. Oh, we got videos to show you. There just wasn't enough hours in the day to make them all into beautiful videos for you, but we will, and then you'll get a chance to see them, and you'll go, he was telling the truth about this. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. Not can't believe that's what they said. Just can't believe that Dale was telling you the truth. Okay, you're going to get a chance to see. And when you look at this, just don't throw anything at the screen, okay? Yeah, so one more. So there's something called the Rural Planning Commission. And we're going to play just a little piece of video for you and then tell you how that relates to today's meeting. Mike, have you got that video ready there, bud? Here's what.
Yes, I do.
Here's what Simon Hare said about the unwritten rules about who could be on the Rural Planning Commission and who can never be on the Rural Planning Commission.
There's probably nothing more important than our Rural Planning Commission. It's the only one who's quasi-judicial and actually can make decisions outside the purview of the board. None of our other commissions actually get to make decisions. They make recommendations to the board. The other two members that had responded to this, one was a former planning department employee, and I don't feel that that's reflective of the greater community when we have people who are former members of staff trying to represent the community on a position. That's just not appropriate to me, and it wouldn't matter who was applying for that. I wouldn't accept that as an application. The other one is not, it's in controversial standings with the board, is a member who has instigated in political activity in a considered to be possibly challenging for this board, so that one of the persons is involved in the potential recall of Commissioner Walker. I don't feel that's the right time for that person to probably engage with the board and not in having a position to be reflective of the community.
Well, what if the majority of the community wanted to recall Cheryl Walker? And listen, that hasn't stopped him from doing other stuff that's not doesn't reflect the community.
And how many ways can we count the perfidy in this statement? Simon Hare was encouraging the people who were trying to, he personally went down to Hardwoods Plus and was encouraging the people there to recall Cheryl Walker. So how is it that he's not reflective of the community? Okay, also, is this one of the hidden criteria? You must be able to get along with this current Board of Commissioners, or you can't be on the Rural Planning Commission? And also, if you've been involved in any way where you question government, not only do you need to answer to Mark Goins at the church about questioning government and Satan worship, but you also can't serve on the Rural Planning Commission? Really? They need to put that in the rules. You don't
Apparently
even
not.
bother to apply if you've ever questioned our government.
Wow.
What kind of phony baloney rule is this?
That's pretty heavy.
And so that was bad. That was a year ago.
A phony baloney rule.
Yeah, that was a year ago, and they were looking for 3 people. Guess how many people they're looking for today? 3. they need 3 new people to serve on this. And so Sandy Casanelli, she said, do you think I should? I said, yes, please put it in. Oh, let's just see what the response is. She got it in plenty of time. And so they looked at these things today, and they were like, and there's also Sandy Casanelli. Now, Sandy Casanelli, former commissioner, served on the BOPTA Board of Property Tax Appeals. See, it's amazing that I even know that. Why do I know that? Okay, and she's been involved with these things in the past, okay, and she assured them that she would be fair, open, and so who did they pick instead? Because they didn't even consider Sandy Casanelli. I mean, this was like an afterthought. She was in time, but see, what you don't understand is if you don't follow the unwritten rules, they're not even going to consider you. They can't consider somebody that knows things about rural planning if they're going to be on the Rural Planning Commission. One of the people they picked, they admitted in this meeting, doesn't know anything about rural planning. Nothing about rural planning. Nothing about rural planning. And that's, wait to hear this name, Jim Brumbach. Well, Jim Brumbach is on the budget committee.
Yeah.
And they agreed, well, we like Jim. We get along with Jim. Getting along with the commissioners is one of the criteria. He just said on that video, it's one of the most important board commissions that we have.
Well, yeah, he's a cuffs guy too, isn't he?
Yes. He was one of the people that was in the front of Mark Goins' church.
That's right.
When they said, when you're done with the sermon here, come on up to the front for advice. About Jesus? No, about the levy. What's the matter with you? Come on up to the front of the church. So there was Jim Brumbach. Well, they love Jim Brumbach. He's first, last, and always levy, 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 levy. Well, yeah. I mean, there's someone that we see eye to eye. It doesn't matter that he doesn't know anything about rural planning, according to the commissioners. That doesn't matter. It's one of the most important commissions that there is. Well, you're not going to pick somebody that knows. You're going to pick somebody that's going to agree with you. Get with the program. So Sandy, absolutely not. And then there was another guy, Smith, Ron Smith. Well, no, they can't accept Ron Smith because, I've heard a rumor, says Simon here, that he may run for commissioner. The others are saying, this is now also a new rule. If you question your government, you cannot be on the Rural Planning Commission.
Yeah, there you go.
Semi-judicial. Supposed to be independent.
Mm.
Well, not if you stack the deck, it's not independent. You pleased with this county government? Are you ready for a change? You think it's about time that there's some kind of change in this kind of thinking? Mike, why don't you bring us on home? Give us advice.
I concur with what you said. That's bringing it home there. Yeah, we got to do something about this. It's a sad story.